A few weeks ago, I finally decided to sit down and put into words the stories I've carried around for years. Living here on the Yakama Reservation in Washington, I've seen a lot that most folks outside these hills wouldn't believe. I grew up surrounded by the mountains and lush forests, and honestly, it's a place of incredible beauty. Sometimes I drive and catch that perfect moment when the sunlight hits the peaks just right, or I stumble onto a scene that looks like it belongs on some fantasy film. I love those moments that remind me why I stay. But underneath all that natural wonder, there's been a lot of pain, hardship, and dark times, especially related to drugs and violence that have haunted us for as long as I can remember. Meth, in particular, has become like a shadow over this place, seeping into every home and every family. You see it in the exhausted, blank eyes of kids whose parents are lost to addiction. You see it in abandoned houses where generations once lived, now just empty shells. And it shows up in the relentless rise of crime robberies, break-ins, fights that seem to be the new norm. An old friend once told me that it turns a life of normalcy into survival mode. When you're living in that kind of environment, there's always a predator lurking, always prey in the shadows. The violence isn't just the fights. It's the fear, the distrust that's everywhere now. I remember one story that still gives me chills about a teacher named Mrs. L, who was the kind of person that made you think things could get better. She loved her students and really cared about the community. She gave us hope. But one night, all that hope was shattered. There was a local guy, Nash, who'd been into meth for years. He'd been in and out of trouble for as long as I could remember. But then his behavior started getting even stranger, started seeing things, acting paranoid, convinced people were after him. Everyone knew he was lost to the drugs, but this night was different. Late that night, Nash snuck out of his house, completely wired, and started wandering the reservation. Most folks knew to avoid him. He was unpredictable, dangerous. And then, out of nowhere, he went after Mrs. L's house. The details are too gruesome to fully describe, but this was no ordinary attack. Nash didn't just kill her, he mutilated her body. Rumor had it he believed that eating parts of her would cleanse his soul, crazy as that sounds that day. Her body was found torn apart, left on her floor with her own blood and bits of her scattered everywhere. Official reports said he'd somehow managed to get hold of a German-made MG-42 machine gun, which explained the incredible amount of gunfire. That weapon was something he'd tucked away in his basement after returning from the war, hidden for over 35 years. What makes this story even more tragic is that Nash's actions weren't just random, they were tied to something deeper. That same night, 3 more victims washed up on the riverbank, all riddled with the same kind of old, antique bullets shot from that machine gun. It wasn't just a senseless act of violence. It felt like something much darker, something tied to old myths about river spirits but twisted into a nightmare. Many in the community believed that the spirit of our river had somehow been awakened, perhaps angered or grieving, and was punishing those involved. The presence of ceremonial tobacco in the victims' mouths, along with the dead fish floating along the shore, pointed to some supernatural explanation. Or so some folks thought. To me, it all seemed much more straightforward. I've seen ambushes in Vietnam that happened during times of transition, during helicopter landings, river crossings, or moments when troops were least prepared. I figured that whoever ambushed those men knew exactly when to strike. The evidence supported that they'd been stabbed with blades, not shot with guns. And yet, the autopsy reports showed no entry or exit wounds, meaning they weren't killed by gunfire. I told this to Chief Lopez, and he agreed it looked like a well-planned attack during a moment of transition. But the forensic analysis threw a wrench into it. Those bodies had no gunshot wounds, only stab wounds. How'd a group of armed men with just knives manage to wipe out 5 heavily armed men? The local police knew everyone here, or so we thought. Our small-town mentality kept us close-knit, and people usually come forward with tips, especially if it's for the good of the community. Yet no one did. No fresh leads, no witnesses. It was strange and worrying. The case hit a dead end, so the tribe called in the FBI for help. Once I arrived, I made it a point to build Truscott to start somewhere right. I asked how we could assist, not to take over but to support their efforts with better resources and expertise. They appreciated that, even if they were a little skeptical at first. The first thing I did was push for the local coroner's office to speed up the autopsies. They were understaffed, and every day counted. Then, I brought in our team of forensic experts to re-examine the crime scene just to get a fresh look. We needed divers for the river and someone to identify the victims. I even made a call directly to law enforcement agencies in Quebec and Ontario to trace their movements, since the river and the territory are split across the border, complicating investigations. Within days, we got our first results. Autopsies confirmed gunshot wounds. Victim had nearly 30 bullets torn through his torso alone. The evidence suggested either a large, lightly armed group or someone with high-powered weaponry. Both scenarios terrifying and almost unbelievable for this community. The dead fish lining the riverbank became another piece of the puzzle. They found a lot of fish-brown trout, muscazole floating dead, as if poisoned. The shell casings included a rare 7.9257 Mauser round, much older than anything widely available now. We also found a single, odd shell casing among the standard 9 and 45 round something from before World War I, which raised questions. The presence of ceremonial tobacco in the victims' mouths, along with the mass of dead fish and the old bullets, pointed strongly toward some supernatural or spiritual aspect, perhaps the river spirit retaliating or sensing injustice. But what truly baffled me was the weapon that had caused all this. A modified German MG-42 machine gun, concealed by Wolf Tarbell, an old Vietnam vet. He'd kept the gun after the war, hid it for decades, and it turned out to be part of what unleashed that chaos. The victims, including the missing girl Sarah from Quebec, weren't the only ones targeted. 3 more bodies turned up to children from Canada, and one from Herold with those same antique bullets. It was obvious this wasn't just about the smuggling or revenge. It was something more calculated, more brutal. I've come to believe that whoever killed Nash and Wolf Tarbell wouldn't have worked alone. It's hard to imagine such violence happening without someone pulling the strings, without a deeper reason. Maybe it was old hatred, revenge, or some twisted attempt at silencing everyone involved. I don't really buy into spirits or supernatural forces. To me, it's human beings, people with hate, greed, or madness who do things that are truly unforgivable. I refuse to believe in ghosts, but I do believe that some evil exists out there, maybe on our reservation. Maybe Bayandan, that it's capable of doing horrible things with no remorse. And I'll keep searching, keep trying to find the truth, because I owe it to those victims, to their families, and most of all, to myself to understand what really happened. But I know this. The case is over for now. A dead end. The trail of clues has gone cold, and the darkness that claimed those lives still waits in the shadows. I can only hope that someday, justice will catch up with those responsible. Until then, I'll carry their stories and remember what we lost, and why we fight to protect what's left of our community. My name's Mark, by the way, and this is my story.